Hello, how are you guys doing? I'm Brian Heath. I'm the producer and founder of Detroit Fashion Week. And how are you guys today? Are you guys in the fashion program? And what specific areas are you guys looking to be a part of professionally, as far as designers, stylists, merchandising, design? What do you design? Everything? Yeah? Yes. Professional buyers? Great. Great. What are you guys in back? What are you looking to go into? What are you into? Designing? And what do you design? Anything that comes to mind? Next to you? Buying? Yeah. Here in front. Display? And here in the middle? Yes. You and then the guy next to you? Design? Merchandising? And you guys on the end? Owning a boutique and PR, so merchandising and buying and a little bit of forecasting and trends and everything else. If you want to make money, you got to know it all. You got to know what you're going to buy for your shop. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about me and my career, because my career has been mainly as an artist. I am a photographer, started in fashion as a fashion photographer in Paris about 30 years ago, roundabout. And I'm an artist. I paint in oils. I do figurative work and murals. I'm a filmmaker. I have traveled around the world shooting documentary work, independent shorts, some feature films, commercials, those types of things, covering everything from post-war to documentaries in the Amazon rainforest to historical documentaries on entertainers and celebrities. I'm an acting coach. I actually teach acting skills for young actors and seasoned actors, and also teach at Casablancas in Canton, Michigan, a couple of nights a week. My career began about 30 years ago as an artist. And as an artist, I found that I really loved shooting fashion as a photographer. And I started in Detroit, Michigan, shooting for a few years after I got out of school. And one day I decided I really wanted to see what fashion was all about. And so round about 19, I believe, 80, 81, I packed my bags and I made a few phone calls, and I moved to Paris. And I didn't know anyone there. I wired some money. I booked a nice cheap hotel in a nice little neighborhood, and I got on a plane and I flew. And I walked around with about 40 pounds of camera equipment on my shoulder to fashion schools and agencies, to stores, to buyers, to designers, and marketed myself as a photographer. And I started working, shooting photography for designers and for modeling agencies, doing composites portfolios, designer portfolios, those types of things. And from there, I really found that I had a knack for fashion. I really loved fashion. I loved the business side of it, the design side of it, styling, merchandising. And so I kind of honed all of those skills over the years, and started not only shooting fashion photography, working with models and training, working with designers, helping them to put together their portfolios, working with stylists for those designers to help them understand how to style those designers' portfolios so that the designers' garments would actually sell, as opposed to all the accessories selling and people looking in your books and saying, oh, where can I buy those shoes and get that hat and buy that jewelry, as opposed to how can I actually find you and purchase some of what you're designing to put into my salon, to my store. Now, what I've been able to do over the years is put all those things together that I've learned and came up with an idea a few years ago, approximately 5 years ago, to create a company called Detroit Fashion Week. Detroit Fashion Week started based on an art gallery that I was director of, called 4731 Gallery in Detroit. It's located on Grand River. The address was 4731 Gallery. We had a number of art shows, exhibits, DIA, all those types of folks there. We had 30 art studios. And so what I did was I mixed those art studios with designers and photographers and videographers and artists, sculptors of all types. Well, one of my designers did a fashion show. And this was, I would say, 20 years after I started in the fashion industry. I'll back up a little bit because where my career went from shooting fashion for about 10 years overseas. Came back to the States and started working here, shooting more entertainment, shot the Grammy Awards, and a lot of those other types of events. I still did a lot of fashion here in the States, but I moved to Michigan, got married, and as we all know, there is not a huge fashion industry here. Well, this one particular designer named Michael DeLon, who was a designer in the gallery, had a fashion show. And that fashion show kind of sparked an interest in me that I had had for a long time. I said, I really want to do this again, but I want to do it in a way so that we not only just have a fashion show, and then a lot of you guys, I don't know if you've had shows before, but I'm sure all of you have gone to fashion shows locally. They're usually in a club or at a party. The party starts at 9, the fashion show starts at 11, and no one buys the clothes, and they're all smoked up because everyone's smoking and drinking and partying, and the designer goes home actually selling nothing. I didn't want to do that. So what I decided to do was start a company that would be more of an industry-type show. And what you're seeing are a number of shows we've had over the past 3 or 4 years, from Fashion Week events specific to shows that we've had from invitations from Campus Martius. This particular event, Campus Martius Park in downtown Detroit, asked us to do a fashion show in the middle of the summer for them. And so we put some of our designers together for that. We've been asked to participate in shows with the Heidelberg Project in Michigan to put together student designers who did green type of designs, organic materials. So we actually put together very professional shows that would be of a style of New York or something like that you would normally want to see as a designer, presenting your garments to an audience who actually may be interested in buying or becoming a private client or having buyers there to actually talk to you about putting your garments in salons or hopefully manufacturing and merchandising on that level. We want you to be able to present your designs with professional models, makeup and hair, and we have a stylist on our staff that actually styles so that your line, your clothing, actually shows with accessories, not with an accessory walking down the runway and your clothes being secondary to them. We are more specifically interested in helping the designers to find buyers. And that was our main and our first goal and our main purpose with Detroit Fashion Week, is to be an industry conduit to help designers find some type of marketing avenue. And the way we do that is we actually have a little over 150 volunteers across the state. And their job is to literally go on the street, go to stores, salons, boutiques, and find out who those buyers are, get that contact information, forward it to us. We put them on our mailing list, and when we have events, we actually send that information to the buyers with a personal invitation to sit on the runway at Fashion Week events. And that strategy has actually worked. We've had Neiman Marcus and Saks on our runways. Of course, Neiman's and Saks aren't necessarily the buyers that a new designer needs because you can't necessarily manufacture 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 pieces. So our goal is to mainly get the local buyers from your community. So we have volunteers in every community across Michigan who will go out to those local areas, find out who those stores are who buy from independent designers, and make absolutely certain that they know about us, know who we are, know where we're located, when our shows are going to be, and how to get to us. And that's what our goal is to put on the side of our runway are the buyers. The shows are always open to the general public so that your friends and family can come, but our main goal is to put your garments out there. Now, what we want to be able to do is to help designers start their careers. But what we found over the years of doing these type of events is that a lot of the folks who call us and email us about volunteering are stylists. They want to work backstage. They want to learn how styling is done for a fashion show, but they also want to be connected to a fashion industry so they can find out what professional stylists do. What I've found is that most styling students, they style, but they don't necessarily understand that they're not styling so that the accessories are the main focus of what they're styling when they're working with a designer. And what we do is we partner those styling students with designers so that they can learn that they're supposed to learn what their designer is creating, what fabrics they're working with, what color trends they're working with, what accessories will match up to their buyers, whether they're selling to a private collection, a private collector, or they're selling to a store or boutique, because you don't necessarily want to put a $600 pair of earrings with a dress that's going to sell for, say, $65, $85, $125, if that's not the clientele that your designer is designing for. And so as a stylist, it's important for you to know who you're styling for, what market that designer is focusing on, and how you're going to style for the trend that designer wants to sell to. Kind of links the stylist in with the trends, forecasting the trends, understanding what the trends are going to be, because the designer normally is going to design for next season. Here in Michigan, a lot of designers design for right now because you want to get your designs out, you want to sell to the next person who walks in the door. But if you really want to do a professional job and you want to be in that league, that category of designers who are designing professionally, you want to get your mindset to start reading the trends. Online, there are online magazines that are free to the public, where you can actually read what the upcoming trends are, what they're going to be, what's going to be happening next year and the year after. Because if you start to understand that as a designer, you'll start understanding how designers create for next season. Just like when you go to the store right now, you're purchasing winter clothes, but you see everything is 50% off, because they really are looking to start moving those out of the way so they can start pulling in those clothes for next season. And as the trends go, so does the merchandise, and so does your profit line, your profit margin, all linked to how your buyers are buying based on the trends of the market, of your consumer market. And that's what you have to deal with as a buyer. I'm going to go back to a stylist because I kind of got away from that. As a stylist, who was the styling student here? Who wants to go into styling? There was someone who raised a hand. Don't be shy now. There was someone in this section. No. Okay. Well, as a stylist, what you want to be able to do is not just understand how to put a dress with a pair of heels and a pair of stockings and a necklace and a bracelet, or a hat or a purse. You really want to understand how to style for a designer, because once you understand that, you'll actually start thinking on a business level of styling as opposed to just a creative level of styling. You have to have more than just a knack for what looks good. You have to have more than just a knack for what you think someone is going to like. You have to have a feeling. You have to identify with that client, whether it's designer or even if you're styling for a personal client that you're going to go in and actually help them to design their closet and design their personal line for what they're going to wear on a daily basis. You have to create a relationship. You have to have a feeling for what they like and what they don't like. I talked to a number of stylists, and they all say the same thing, is that when they're styling, whether it's designer or for a personal client, they literally want to be able to connect. They find out what their likes and dislikes are, where they go, if they go to the theater, if they go hockey, if they go horseback riding, if they ride motorcycles. All of that goes into the personality of either what the designer is designing for or what your personal client is going to do. And so you start learning to style based on that line, based on their personal preferences, their favorite colors. You look at their color charts. You look at their skin tones, their hair, their eyes, and all those things will come into play. If you're designing for a personal client, if you're designing for a designer, you look at what their trend is, what they're setting their line up for the trend, their colors, the color scheme they're working in, the fabrics that they're designing for, the clientele that they're selling to, and you start styling along that level. Now, as a designer, I'm going to switch back and forth because I know a lot of you guys are going into a lot of different areas. So I'm going to try to focus on a particular area, but I'll be switching back and forth from time to time. As a designer, you can't design everything. And I've spoke to hundreds of kids and hundreds of students and hundreds of stylists who are styling and designers who are designing that say they can do everything. They want to do everything. Whereas a designer, you kind of have to get a feel for what you design, what you want to design, what you have a passion to design, whether that's going to be pants or dresses, or whether it's going to be purses and necklaces or shoes. There's going to be something that you design well, that you have a very good feeling for, that you have a very good knack for. It's going to be something that comes kind of natural. You can't design everything, even though at this level, if you're just starting out, sure, you want to be able to design a dress or a purse or a pair of pants or a scarf or whatever it is. But somewhere along the line, you really want to focus in on what it is that you design and design well, because once you get to a point where you put your book together, you want to show your best work. You don't want to show a composite of everything that's possible to design. You want to show a book that you're showing a line of dresses or a line of pantsuits or whatever that is going to be in clothing. If you're going to design purses as well, then do a line of purses. Decide on what fabrics, what materials you're going to design those with, what colors you're going to use, what everything that you're going to do. You want to come up with a line, come up with a strategy, and base that line on a trend. You can come up with something out of your head, and it can be outdated as soon as you start working on it. What you want to focus on at this level, at this early stage, is how professional designers start the process. They start that process at a point where they have an idea of what's going to sell, what people are going to be buying. And everyone wants to come out with the latest, greatest, never been seen before. No one's ever done this before. No one's ever designed it before. Trust me, everything that comes out has been seen somewhere. It's just presented differently. It's presented in a different material, advertised in a different way. What you want to do is focus in on the people who like what you're doing. You're not going to change someone's complete style. So what you design is going to have some effect on a person who actually appreciates what they see, whether it's a fabric, whether it's the color tones you use. People literally have specific things that they will buy. And you want to be able to be a designer who knows what the trends are going to be, which means that you have to study the trends. You want to be a designer who understands what the price lines are for the people you want to sell to. If you're looking to sell a lot of quantity, maybe your price line is going to be between that $65 and $200 range. If you want to sell custom designs, maybe you're selling garments, dresses that are in the $1,500 to $3,000 or $4,000 range and above. You want to be able to do that because the more you're charging for your garments, the more detail work you're going to have to do to sell them to the right clientele who's going to buy them. Because folks who spend a lot of money on garments are looking for extreme quality. They're looking for a designer who can make every single detail, 20, 30, 40 different measurements on every body part, from necks to shoulders to cuffs. Everything is going to be measured. I don't know if you guys have, as a designers, have gone to some custom tailor shops where they design shirts, like these custom shirts for men. And you'll see that literally every single aspect of that shirt has a specific pattern that's going to be a part of that design. And as a designer, you need to know those things. As a designer, you should know how to sew. Now, I know nowadays designers feel that they don't really need to understand how to sew. But here's what professional designers tell me. If there's a designer who doesn't know how to sew, not that you have to sew, but if you don't know how to sew, if you don't understand how the way it's sewn, the way your garment is sewn, the way a piece is put together, you really won't understand how it's going to fit the person you're designing for. I've heard that from very experienced designers who've shown in New York Fashion Week and some of the major shows, who sell $3,000 to $12,000 garments. They all say the same thing. Even though you may never pick up a needle and thread and sew a complete garment for anyone, you really do need to understand how to sew, because that's how you understand how the human body is shaped. Anatomy is a huge part of fashion design. There are some schools that actually have an anatomy program and a drawing program, an art program, where you actually have to draw the human body, figure drawing. Because if you understand figure drawing as art, then you understand shape and form and how the form and shape of a body flows. That's what creates the beauty. When you visualize a garment that you want to create, you're literally visualizing what's called old master style art. When you visualize it, you see a garment flowing. You may see someone walking in your mind. You see how the fabric flows, and all of a sudden you think, okay, well, maybe that's silk, or maybe it's cotton, or maybe it's some other type of material. You think in those terms as a designer. What you have to understand is how to translate what you see in your mind, how to translate that with your hand to a piece of paper so you can draw the figure and draw the garment correctly, so that it actually fits the human form before you go to the process of putting a pattern together. And yes, you have to learn pattern drafting. That's a part of designing. You can't just sketch a garment and hand it off to some guy and say, make this for me in green and in gabardine or whatever the material might be, because what you will get is that pattern drafter's design based on your creative idea. You as a designer should know how to draft the pattern so that when you actually draw the design, you're drawing in the details of what goes where. You understand, because you've learned how to sew, how the threads are going to be sewn, how the stitches are going to show, where they're not going to show, if they're going to show in a certain pattern or a certain angle, or it's got to be stitched a certain way so a dress or a pair of pants flows in a certain way when a person walks in it. You have to know that. It's all technical stuff, but as a designer, you should know that, because when you sit down with an experienced designer, those are the things you'll most likely talk about. You're not going to sit and talk about all the creative things you've come up with. Everyone's come up with every type of creative design ever. But when you really sit and talk with people who are experienced, they're going to talk technique. And those are the things you want to be able to understand and know before you actually put yourself out there and say, I'm a designer. Understand the design process, the trends, forecasting, pattern drafting, how to sew. Those things put your mind in the process of doing business. Because once you understand all those processes, then you can start working on finding a stylist to work with your fabrics, because you can tell them exactly what you're looking for, what colors, what forms. You can relate to them technically on the things you want to see accessorizing your garments. Those are the things as a designer that you need to know. A little further, as a designer, you need to understand the merchandising process. Most designers, professional designers, have a designer's rep. They don't normally deal with stores directly. They have a rep that actually goes out and sells for them. Here in Michigan, that most likely is not the case, because there aren't many buyers here in Michigan except in the stores. So your job is going to have to understand what the process is, what the pricing is on how you sell your garments. Now, most designers I know who come out of school, they walk into a shop and they try to sell their garments at exactly what they want to make for, if they want to walk out with their profit. What you have to understand, if you're designing a garment and you want to sell it for $350, that's what you're going to sell to your client for. The average store is going to buy that from you for half that price. So your garment sells for $150. The store is going to get half of that. You're going to get the balance. So now you're at $150 profit on that garment, no matter what you paid for the material. Okay? So you really need to understand the marketing aspect of how to sell your garments into a store. And that goes whether you're selling to Macy's or whether you're selling to one of the boutiques in Royal Oak or Ferndale or somewhere. All of them work on the same process. 50% of your 50% of your price literally will go to the store. So actually think about your price before you walk in the door to try to sell your garment. You want to think about how much you want to walk out in your pocket, and then just double it before you walk in, and be honest about it. Because the bottom line is that's the deal. Even I know some online stores that are doing the same thing with new designers. And they don't have as huge a markup as a store would have, and a standard retailer would have, because they still have to pay employees, insurances, lights, gas, and all those things. So that's a part of the markup. And they want to make a profit as well. So you've got to understand, no matter what you're selling your garment for, 50% is going to go to the guy who's selling it for you. Now, as far as having a buyer, having a designer's rep is going to be someone who actually is going to be handling a marketing process for you. Those of you guys who are going into merchandising, everything I just talked about as far as designers, I would suggest that you guys have a very good understanding of, not necessarily pattern drafting and sewing, but from a designer's point of view and from a styling point of view, merchandising that's the end of every part of the process. Someone who is who's in merchandising basically is responsible for the bottom line of the store they're working for. And there are horror stories about buyers who've gone to shows and purchased the greatest, latest design and literally put a store out of business. Literally put stores out of business. And that's what buyers have the potential to do. As a buyer, you have to understand who you're selling for, who your client is, not your personal taste in what that store, not your personal taste in what you like, but the taste of who you're buying for. If you're selling for, or if you're buying for a small boutique that sells leather goods to women 18 to 35, then you've got to know literally who their clients are. You've got to do your research on who the clients are, what the price lines are, what the buy-ins are for what you're going to actually write a check for to whoever is actually wholesaling you the garments, or the designer that's wholesaling the garments to you. You've got to understand the trend, when these garments are actually going to sell. Are they going to sell next season? Well, if you don't study the forecasting, if you don't look at the trends, if you don't look at the major markets, and that's not just markets here in the U.S., but it's markets overseas, because those markets are the ones who actually set the trends at the beginning stages, and then you have New York Fashion Week, and the trends, all those the trend information comes out. But you as merchandising students, you as buyers, have to understand what those trends are, because if you buy the wrong merchandise for the wrong store, you're going to sink them. And that's the thing that I try to put in the heads of students who actually want to be buyers. You don't want to put your store in jeopardy. You don't want to cost jobs. You don't want to cost them business. You don't want to see employees lose their jobs because you simply just bought the wrong product at the wrong price at the wrong time. So you've got to do your homework. You've got to, if you're buying from a designer, you've got to understand who that designer is. You've got to understand their price line. You've got to understand who their clients are. Match them up to your client, who is the store, and see if it makes sense to buy that designer's line in. How many pieces of that designer's line do you buy? Oh, you really, really like it, so you buy 100 pieces. Well, maybe you've got room for maybe 5 pieces on the shelf at a time. You've got to make all those decisions, and you may have to make them, on the spot. So you've got to do your homework well ahead of time. As students, the best thing you can do is start studying the trends now and looking at what's being sold in major stores and boutiques now, and start figuring out, did it make sense for these guys to buy these things? Go into some of the small boutiques and look at what's on the shelf on a Monday. and walk in that same boutique maybe 2 weeks from now and see if those same things are still on that shelf. As a buyer, create your own study of what a trend is and how that trend lasts and whether it made sense. In your own mind, you can kind of determine whether this store is losing money on an item based on how long you see it sitting on a shelf. Use a store that you know of as a study tool. Turn it into a project and actually study what's happening in that store. See if they're buying. Talk to the management there to find out how they feel about a garment that's on their shelf. If it's actually selling, if they have a buyer that bought it, are they happy with that buyer? Kind of gives you an idea of how to work with a store owner and what you're going to do in the future when you actually get to the point where you're going to be buying for someone, how to create a relationship, how to talk to them, make that store owner your best friend so they can tell you everything that you need to know about them, not just who they are as a business, but who they are personally. Because a store owner basically buys everything based on their personal taste. You, as a buyer for them, have to have a way of getting them to buy what you know is going to sell in the store. So they trust you with every decision you make because literally you are running their business as a buyer. That's what you have to understand. Now on to, let's see, what we've got: designers, stylists, and merchandising. I think we've hit on all three of those. Now, you guys want to own a store. So you need to know everything that these guys in the merchandising program need to know. Now, what classes are you taking? What program are you in? Fashion merchandising? Right. You need to know everything literally about merchandising. You also have to understand the process of leasing or buying your specific business, your location. And that's going to be extremely important. Location is always important. Nowadays, it's a big question of lease or buy. And most businesses nowadays lease. So because it's buying a property, cities change, neighborhoods change, business environment changes, and literally having a business in the wrong location can shut you down no matter what you're selling, because people aren't necessarily willing to, go where you happen to be if you're a small boutique. Now, what you have to understand is how to base your margin, your overhead, so you can actually make profit, and understanding what actual profit is for a store, what your profit margin is, whether it's 15%, whether it's 20%, 25%, what is a real profit? What's the standard profit for a retail store based on selling what you specifically want to sell in your store? You've got to decide how much money you're going to put in on the front end, how much you're going to lock in for advertising dollars, because that's one of the biggest things, also one of the major reasons why stores, especially boutiques, tend to go under. They take $100,000 and they open a store. They spend $75,000 on merchandise, and it's the greatest merchandise in the world. They've got $25,000 left for food and rent and all those other things. And then some guy walks in the door and he says, well, I can sell you a television spot for X amount of dollars, or I can sell you advertising this magazine for X amount of dollars, and your answer is, well, we've got a clientele. We really don't have money for advertising right now. And I can tell you right now that there are stores that I know of personally that are going under because they didn't set aside budget when they opened for advertising dollars. Advertising is huge. Advertising in retail, I would say probably 25-30% of a budget should be set aside for advertising. Over the course of a year or whatever period you're looking to advertise, if you're going to advertise seasonally, 25-30% of a budget is not a bad figure for advertising, because that's the way you actually draw your customers in. You have to determine what advertising is going to work best for what you're going to sell, whether it's going to be television, radio, print advertising, flyers in the neighborhood based on the clientele you're going to go to, whether you're going to do private events, those types of things, or you can do the creative things. But you want to make absolutely certain, if you're planning to open a store, set aside some money for advertising. If you don't, plan on going out of business soon after you open, because you're not going to be able to afford to stay open because no one's going to know you're there. Websites, designers, stylists, merchandising, store owners, everyone wants a website. Here's the secret to having a good website. A good website is a site where people actually visit you because they know you're there. Now, I've got two websites. I have a website for my film company, film and media, and I've got a website for Detroit Fashion Week. My media company's website is 1.3 million hits a month worldwide. Detroit Fashion Week is getting 40,000 hits a month. That's worldwide. Now, I didn't go to a company and say, put us at the top of the list, or Google. I didn't pay a company to do anything. I designed the site myself because I also do web design. Now, your website is literally going to be dependent on the people you know, because in order for a website to be popular, you've got to have money to advertise that site. People aren't going to just find you except for the people you know. So you've got to be smart about putting a web page or website together. A lot of folks now are doing MySpace web pages, which tend to work well, but when you really talk to people who are online, who have MySpace pages, and you ask them if they're selling anything, the answer is usually no, because MySpace tends to be a site where people just kind of look at your page and they say it's really nice, and they keep moving. They don't buy anything there for the most part. Having your own personal web page very well may work if you're a popular designer. Very well may be a pointless expense if you're an unknown designer. So I would suggest that if you're going to invest in a web page as a designer or even as a retail outlet, find a site where there are a number of other designers that receive a lot of hits. There are websites out there that may be getting 1 million, 2 million hits a month, and there are a number of designers there. And when you do your business cards, you can find us on this website. They may find other designers as well, but you're going to get some hits and you're going to be found there because it's a popular site. Having your own personal website at the beginning is probably one of the worst things you can do, and it's probably going to be a total waste of expense. So I wouldn't suggest designing your own web page. That should be one of the last things you do as a designer. As a store, having a website is an extremely important thing, but again, you've got to know where to place it. Whether you place your website in an online mall where other businesses are is probably going to be good, because you know that if there are a number of other businesses there, everyone as a group are all pushing people to that online mall. If you have your own personal website, well, then it's going to be a matter of whether you've got thousands of dollars to put up billboards and radio and television so that people can know that you're out there. That's literally how websites work. So you can have the greatest website in the world. It can look extremely beautiful. It can be spectacular. It can have flash and music and people flying across. But if no one knows you're there, it's not going to make you one dime. It's just going to be a monthly expense. Now, about Detroit Fashion Week. So far, any questions? I'm touching on a lot of stuff. You have a question. She's elbowing you. No? Yes? I went to school for business. Went to school for business. I minored in criminal justice. But I've gone to lots of other schools, photography. I've taken programs and classes in art. Over 30 years, I've done some of everything. There's not much I haven't done. I owned a computer company. My computer company was responsible for changing the Army Corps of Engineers in downtown Detroit over from DOS to Windows. We did all the networking, all the infrastructure, all the updating, about 600 computers there. So I do networking infrastructure, web design. But the reason I was able to do all of these things is because I've been self-employed for 30 years. I started as a photographer, and I haven't had a quote-unquote full-time job since, but I work about 13, 15 hours a day. At this very moment, I shot a video for the Institute of Arts in Flint on a 88-foot fresco an artist designed for their main entrance. It's hanging there now. And so we spent 9 months actually videotaping that, so we're actually editing that right now. On this past Friday, I was at a school in Detroit painting a 160 by 5-foot mural that I'm working on. That's hopefully I'll be finished with that come the end of this year. But I've been able to do that because I've been working on my own as an artist So I've been able to work with a lot of people and learn a lot of different things and basically apply myself to learn as much as I possibly could in the arts. I write scripts. I do filmmaking. I do a lot of things. I direct and produce films. And like I said, I'm an acting coach. I do a lot of different things. But all of those things because I made the time to do it. And that's the thing about being independent. If you're, yes, Marianne. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, networking. Yes, networking is the most important thing. Everything that I do, and even Detroit Fashion Week, is a tool literally designed for networking, fashion industry. But with Fashion Week, and this is what I try to tell designers as well, Fashion Week events or fashion events that are industry type events are major for networking, to meet people who can buy your goods, so you can get your work out there, but also invest in what you do. Designers need investors. You need people who will literally give you money to design, so you can sit and design and create, because that's what you do. They invest in you. They invest in your product. They literally, almost like placing money in a stock market, and some designers are literally, sold over the stock market. They're companies anyhow. As a designer starting off, the best thing that you can do is find investors to invest in you or to help you, to sponsor you, because your materials are going to cost a lot if you're looking at designing from quality materials. You as a designer, most designers I talk to, especially the students, can't afford to actually produce a full line because the materials alone cost an arm and a leg. And then finding the time to be able to sit and produce. Well, most new designers actually do sit and actually sew every garment. Every single thing you see here are produced by independent designers. Most of them are from the Michigan area. Some are from Atlanta, New York, Alabama. But every single one of these garments you see were produced by an independent designer. And these guys have to produce 20 garments minimum to produce a full line. They have to produce that full line for the season ahead. So if you see summer there, they produce the summer garments to be shown in September for the following summer. And for a lot of designers, student designers especially, sometimes you say to yourself, well, why would I want to do that? I can't really sell them. If I'm producing something for next summer, that's 6 months from now. But if you start working in the mind state of producing things for business, for exactly the way designers in New York and LA and Paris and Milan produce, if you get your mindset that way, you will actually start producing the trend and fit into the mold of what designers do. You can always design for an independent client for something for next weekend. That's not a big deal. But to produce something that you can fly out to Chicago and get into a show and put on a major market runway, to go to LA or New York and put on a runway, so you can be seen by buyers. Because, I've talked to a lot of folks here in Michigan, and to be honest, there are no buyers located in Michigan that actually sell for the major markets. Detroit Fashion Week has been able to draw attention from major markets, and our goal is to be able to bring buyers back to Michigan, because we had tons of buyers here years ago. But right now, in order to attract major buyers for the major stores, Chicago, Toronto, New York, Los Angeles are the major markets. That's where they are. So you want to be able to design so that you can take your garments to a major show and show them so that buyers who are buying from manufacturers can buy. And that way you can actually sell in larger quantities. You can actually make a career of it. Or you decide to be one of those one-of-a-kind designers who will design, like Caterina Bocci designs dresses that are, like I say, anywhere from $1,500, $2,000 up to $12,000. But she has a clientele. Now, Aretha Franklin's dresses that she's wearing on her new CD cover, they flew Caterina to New York to actually design those for the photo shoot. She just sent me a photograph the other day. She designed some garments for the cover of Supermodel magazine. So there are two girls from CW's show Gossip Girl who are wearing some of her designs. And she has a clientele who are buying one-of-a-kind garments, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000. You have a choice of who you want to design for and what you want to design. But what you want to be able to do as a designer is not put yourself in a position where you're all over the place. Know your clientele, know who you're designing for, because that's how you're going to find yourself with a name. Now, one thing about the business side of designers, every designer I know who graduates from design school, the first thing they do is they start an LLC and they have a company name. And it's going to be, Sunshine Designs. That's all fine and dandy. But please study what major designers do. You want people to know your name as a designer. If people know your name as a designer, they're buying you. You can always sell under an LLC, under a fictitious name. You can always have a company that can handle the taxes and all those things for you. You want your garments to be known as your garments, your name. That's what's important to designers. That's why Ralph Lauren and all the others sell under their name. There's a reason why. Because people recognize that designer by their name. No matter what fancy name you can come up with that no one's ever heard of and it's going to be the greatest name and people are going to love it, you want people to know who you are as a designer. That's one of the things that designers have over almost every other business. There's almost no other business where you're literally selling your name. And specifically because designers who are true to design as an art form study design and do design as artists. Artists sell their name as an artist. And design is an art form. And you have to look at it that way. It's a business, but you design as a creative artist. That's first and foremost. So don't spend a whole lot of time worrying about coming up with a fancy name. Come up with your name and turn that into a corporation. You can always make another corporation to sell sell clothes at a lower price or sell to merchandising, but make absolutely certain that people know who you are as a designer. That's key. That's the most important thing you want, so to let people know who you are, because once they know who your name is, that's the name that will be floating across the internet. You've got to have a so-and-so, so-and-so, and it's your name. That's what you want to be able to do, because your name is what's going to make you popular. Your name is what's going to drive the price. That's what's going to be important. Your name will never go out of business. Questions? Okay, a little bit about what you need to know. There's an organization called Fashion Group International, and our board chair is sitting back there, Mary Ann, and I'm also on the board. The Fashion Group International, I'm sure you've heard of it. If you haven't, it's an organization that actually is responsible for setting the trends in fashion. That's what we do. Fashion Group International, I'm going to read you here based on what it says about us. Your Fashion Group began in 1928 with 17 women. There are no guys here, and I think I'm maybe one of 2 or 3 guys in Michigan. 2? Yeah, Tom? Yeah, one of 2 guys who are actually part of the organization here. It was started by Edna Woolman. She was the editor-in-chief of Vogue magazine. All the major designers back in those days were a part of this organization. And it was mainly designers, major magazines. Excuse me. They actually got together and decided, we're going to do something with fashion. We're going to make fashion the thing that people are looking at as a business. We're going to make it extremely important for people to understand that it is a business. It's not just people in fancy clothes having really lush parties. So Fashion Group is a global nonprofit organization. It's a professional organization with about 5,000 members in the fashion area, including apparel, accessories, beauty, and home. So we cover the gamut. No matter what part of the fashion industry you're in, Fashion Group International is a group that you should belong to. We're all over the world. We're a major part of New York Fashion Week, major part of Toronto Fashion Week, major part of Detroit Fashion Week. But if you look up fgi.org, you'll see that, I mean, we are the organization for designers especially, and folks in the design industry to be a part of. And if you don't know who we are, you need to know if you want to be a part of this industry, because you'll run into us sooner or later. You're going to have to deal with us one way or the other. You're going to come through one of our organizations, one of the groups, no matter where you are. We're in almost every state in the country. The largest groups are in New York and Los Angeles. So you want to know who we are, but we're in Paris. We're all over the place. And we are the organization. We have an event coming up in December, our trend event, which is based on New York Fashion Week. Every single garment that hit the line has been looked at and appraised, and literally you'll be told what the trends are for next season, what fabrics are hot, what color schemes are hot, what patterns in those colors and those fabrics are going to be really hot. You'll see them everywhere. You'll see them from thousands of dollars and then probably marked down at Walmart and Kmart to a couple of dollars. But those will be the trends, and they come from not Detroit Fashion Week, but Fashion Group International. So that's an organization that you want to be a part of. And our goal is to basically help people who want to be in the industry to understand the professional practices of those industries. So if you're in beauty or you're in design or styling or whatever those things are, folks who are part of our organization are actually working in the industry. Or they are presidents of major corporations here in Michigan, or major administrative level persons from national organizations. So you definitely want to come to our events, attend some of our mixers which are free. And one is coming up December 3rd? No, this Friday. This Friday coming? Next Tuesday? It's next Tuesday. Yeah, in Royal Oak. And it's going to be at Small Plates again? Yeah, Small Plates, and it's free. And, I mean, we have a lot of folks who come who want to be in the fashion industry. You'll meet, editors of fashion magazines, folks who actually write about fashion, newspapers and print. And so it's definitely something you want to be a part of. So you want to write that down, fgi.org. The other organization you need to know about is the Council of Fashion Designers of America. Sounds like a goofy name. They are the most important organization in fashion on the planet, because that organization decides who is going to be in New York Fashion Week. And no other organization decides that. They are the organization, the Council of Fashion Designers of America. And they're a nonprofit also. Their organization sponsors, the CFDA and the Vogue Fashion Fund, scholarships, professional development programs, and awards for fashion design. They do that every year. It's cfda.org is their website. You definitely want to check their website out, because they are major when it comes to fashion. They have award ceremonies that are similar to the Oscars in fashion design. They just did one with Donatella Versace in New York just last month, I believe, which was like $1,500 per ticket. But you could go to the reception for $350. But that's an organization that you want to read about, because that way you'll understand how fashion business is done and who handles it, who's in control, because it's not some haphazard who's at the top of the food chain in fashion. There's an organization who decides who's going to be who and when it's going to happen, and that's the organization that actually decides it. Now, the CFDA also, like I say, they determine who's going to do New York Fashion Week. They determine who's going to do it. Major advertising agency actually sets the planning, the calendar, the tents, and all those other things. But that's what those organizations do. Now, let's see. Any questions? Merchandising people. What are you guys doing? Yes. Well, see, that's the thing. Right. Well, it kind of sort of is, but that's what I'm saying. You should go into boutiques, literally choose one or two boutiques that you're going to study as a personal study. Walk into that boutique, just look around and see what's on the shelf. Look at what's on a rack. See how many garments of certain designs on a rack. Find out what's the most popular thing in the store that's selling. And then find out what's the least popular thing that's selling. And make notes on how fast you see those garments move. Find out why they bought those in. I'm pretty sure a lot of store owners will share that type of stuff with you if they know your students of buying. Also, if you're a buyer, if you're a student in buying or merchandising, the best thing you can do is to walk into a store and talk to the owners about what they're buying and how they're buying and who they're buying for and how many, because that's your job. That could be literally your job before you graduate, because there's no requirement that says you have to have your degree to be a buyer. They want you to know what you're doing, so they want to know that you've studied. They want to know that you've gone through the program. They want to know that you've actually put yourself into it. They don't want someone just off the street. But for you to go in and actually start working with a store or talking to a store or a number of stores about what they're doing, when you're in that program, you'll start getting a real-world understanding of how buying happens. Whether a store is buying one or two of a piece or three or four of a piece is usually up to the buyer, not necessarily up to the store owner, because for our practical purposes, at some point they don't even want to understand that process once they trust you. What you have to convince them of is that you have studied their store, you understand what they buy, you understand who their customers are, and you have an idea how many of certain types of garments are going to sell in a week or in a month. So, like you say, to say that a small boutique may buy anywhere from 1 to 5 pieces on an average, according to how much money they have in the bank, how much money they're willing to invest, how much money they're willing to basically gamble they're going to sell so they can turn a profit. And they really don't know, except for the fact that they have an idea of who their customers are and what their customers have bought in the past. You as a buyer add something to that process, because now you studied trends and forecasting and you understand what they may possibly buy in the future based on who they are and how you can advertise to them to turn them into a buyer of a new product you may bring in. And it's a psychology that you have to understand as a buyer of who the designer is, because the designer is going to give you a hard sell. Sorry, designers. On their garment, it's the best thing ever. It's new. It's going to be hot. It's going to sell millions. You have to determine whether that's going to be hot for the store you're selling for. You've got to determine whether you can sell 10 or 20 in a month, or you can sell 2 or 3 in a month. You've got to determine how much it's worth to invest into it and how much you can sell it for. Excuse me. So you figure, based on what your store is giving you for a budget to buy for in a month or a year, because a lot of major stores have an annual budget for buying. Well, you've got $100,000 for the year, and this is what you're going to use to buy for us for the year. So you can sink us, or you can make us extremely happy on Christmas. How are you going to buy? You have to determine what shows you're going to go to, what fashion market shows you're going to go to, whether it's going to be the Chicago shows, whether it's going to be the New York or the Los Angeles shows, or whether it's going to be some events here in Detroit. What designers you want to look at, what margins they sell at. If you're going to look at the high-end designers, or you're going to look at a moderate line, you're going to look at the independent designers who are selling for less but may have a certain clientele that you can buy for. You as a buyer, you have to literally almost create a paper on what you're going to do. Draw up a blueprint. Come up with a paper that shows, well, who's the client, who's their customer, how much do they have in their budget, is it for a week, or is it for the month, or is it for the year? How do I divide this up, summer versus winter? Is this store really hot in the summer? Does it sell more in the summer than it sells in the winter? How do I divide that budget up based on what I buy? Or is it a seasonal place? All those things are the things that you have to figure out as a buyer. So it's not as cut and dry as you might think. You walk in, they give you some money, and they say, we want 40 pair of jeans in various shades of blue, and then you just go out and pick them. There's a lot of thought that goes into it, because literally You are controlling every dime that store will make based on the budget you walk out the door with. So that, I mean, it's a huge responsibility because you can put people out of business. You can put people out of work. You can literally have people evicted from their homes just based on what you bought. That's the responsibility of a buyer. It's extreme. I mean, that's like the most extreme position. That's like being a stockbroker, except, they don't go to jail. But as a buyer, you really have a huge responsibility in buying and merchandising. And merchandising, if you're looking to purchase for a distributor, manufacturing that is, I mean, literally you've got so many things that you have to look at based on what that manufacturer has to spend on, employee cost and insurance cost and manufacturing cost and fabrics and all those things to go out and find a designer that you think, someone's going to pay us, $40 per pair of pants to make, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 pieces. Well, how do we know they're going to sell? How do we know they're going to fly out the door? You've really got to study your market, and those two positions are the positions that really, studying the trends and being able to look at forecasting, knowing your designers, those are the most important things, the absolute most important. Yep. Any other questions? Yes. I like shooting pictures more than anything else, and painting. I mean, I paint all the time. The mural I'm painting now is 160 by 5 feet, and I'm like there every Sunday, about 6 hours every Sunday painting, then I'm working on another exhibit, photography and photo, which will happen sometime in March. But I enjoy photography and painting more than anything else. But I photograph models. And almost everything I shoot, even when I'm doing location shooting, I'm always thinking in terms of how this would fit into a fashion spread or a fashion photograph or a model's portfolio or some type of shot. So everything still revolves around fashion, which revolves around art and anatomy and form and shape and all those things. I think I love fashion because it's to me, it's the culmination of all those things. When you look at fashion, if you look at art, like in Paris, if you've looked at some of Michelangelo's sculptures, the way they're fashioned in stone are fashion designs. I mean, the garments that they're wearing, the faces, the hair, everything to me is fashion. That's what I tell most students I talk to them, like, especially with Fashion Week and especially with designers who are looking for, investors. There's no such thing as someone who is not capable or possible to be an investor in fashion, whether it's cars or custom sunglasses or travel or whatever. If you're a designer, you are fashion. Everyone needs what you do. There's got to be a way to link yourself to an investor who's willing to advertise with you in mind. If you're designing and you know a store, and here's something I just told a friend of mine not maybe 6 weeks ago. She designs purses, and she works with green fabrics, organic fabrics. And she was saying, well, she's gone into stores and she's been trying to sell them in, but no one's willing to buy them from her. And so I said, well, if your garments are that hot, if your purses are that hot, and you feel that they're going to make sense practically, and you don't have the opportunity to get a buyer to buy hundreds of them, and you just want to get them out there, walk into a store with your garments and rent some space. No one's going to turn down money, especially in this day. So you walk in, a guy's got a rack and it's empty. You tell a guy, look, I'll pay you $75. I'll pay you $50. I'll pay you $100. Let me put 10 of my garments on this rack. If they don't sell, you made $100. If they sell, you made $100, and then we can work out a deal on how I can supply you with more. He has no risk. You just invested in your business, so it's a win-win. And you get to tell people that your clothes are somewhere. You know, rent space. That's what businesses do. These guys are going to open a store. They're going to rent space and open a store. You as a designer, you look at, I mean, you've got to be creative in this market because no one has money. Every store you go into, every boutique you walk into has probably had a 50% off sale for 6 months, and it's not going away. So that means that they're not selling, no matter whether it's a $600 piece or it's a $50 piece or a $30 piece. The reason it's not selling because the customers are not buying as much and they're not buying as often. So this guy still has to pay some kind of bill, you know, $50, $100, and literally just your friends and family alone. If you tell them, hey, you can go buy my things at so-and-so, so-and-so, you already paid for the space. It's sitting in the store. Folks will come in, and they'll buy it. Now you've created a business relationship. Now you can go to 10 other stores and say, well, you know, I've got my things at so-and-so store. They're selling there now. You know, we've sold, you know, so-and-so 18, 20 pieces over the last month or so, and, you know, things are going well. Can I place a few garments here? You work out a different business. You don't pay everybody. But, you know, you work out a different arrangements. Then that's a good way to test your market as opposed to, you know, getting a MySpace page and trying to sell your goods on MySpace. Put them in a store where people are going to come in and touch them. Put them somewhere where they can be actually accessed by the people who are going to wear them, because that's where you can test market it. There's no better test market of a new designer's garments other than being on a rack in a store where people can actually try them on and see if they want to buy them. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it. And even as a buyer, I mean, if you're a student buyer and you're learning the business, the easiest way for you to learn the business is to talk to people who want to be in design. Find out how their minds work. Find out what they want to sell, how they want to sell. Come up with scenarios on how they can sell their goods, how you could place them. Where do you think their designs would belong? I mean, that's how things work. I mean, when I came up in business, I always had an attorney who was a friend, an engineer who was a friend, a doctor who was a friend. I've got friends in every type of business there is before I got out of school, because those are the folks you're going to need along the way. If you're a designer and you're in school and you know folks who are serious about going into the business as buyers, as stylists, as store owners, well, gee, these are guys who should be the people you talk to now, because as you graduate, you all go into your own separate businesses, but now you've got all these contacts between a stylist who has styling contacts and a buyer who has stores that she's already contacted while she's in school. As a store that's going to open, I mean, these guys will buy your goods. They'll have a budget. You know, I mean, that's what you have to do. Create your businesses before you actually graduate. Don't wait until you get your degree and then decide, okay, now I'm going to go into business. Be business-minded now. Work as a student as if you're in business. Do the study, because once you graduate and go into business, you're going to have to do the same thing. Form those habits now. So when you graduate, you already know exactly what you want to do. You know how to do it. You've got people you can contact. You've got an avenue of contacts that legitimately can look at you as a serious resource. You know, you want to do those things. Send some letters out to major markets. I know a friend of mine came by and looked through some of my contacts the other day. She's looking to intern in New York and just started making phone calls and found an internship at a magazine in New York. She's working for free, but it's an internship. That's what interns do. You work for free, but, you know, you get legitimate experience. That's what you should be doing. You can't sit around and wait. If you're a designer and you don't know how to sew, pick up a needle and thread. Your teachers can only teach you so much in the course of a school day. If you're a designer and you really want to design, you need to know how to sew. If you don't want to know how to sew, you might want to look at a different career, because guaranteed is that if you give your designs to a pattern maker and you have no idea what their garment's going to look like once it's put together, you're not going to like it. It's not going to be your design, because the way a garment is sewn determines how it's going to drape, how it's going to look. You know, so you need to know those basic things. You're not that you could become an expert seamstress, but know the basics, different techniques of sewing. I don't know those techniques. I don't sew, but you should. Okay. Any other questions? Designers. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. Well, Detroit Fashion Week, we've been around for going on 5 years now. And just after our last show in September, we got contacted by one of the associate editors at Women's Wear Daily. And, they're like the Bible of fashion. And what they decided to do was, I guess they've been looking around the country at what they call domestic fashion weeks. And they looked at our website and decided to call and send an email saying they want to actually do coverage of Detroit Fashion Week next September. So I contacted them, and we've been talking over the last couple of weeks. We did an interview over the phone and an online interview in print. And so what they want to be able to do is they're going to come to Detroit. They're going to send a reporter, that is. They're going to cover Detroit Fashion Week in a way which kind of details, what we're about, what we do. They were asking questions like, what is Detroit fashion, which we tried to explain to them. Well, we're fashion universal. Detroit fashion is global. We're not, green gaiters and, purple suits and those types of things. That's one segment of what people have seen on television. We are legitimate fashion. We have legitimate designers here in Michigan. We explain that to them. So, don't look at Detroit as being one specific thing. Detroit Fashion Week is Michigan. Our designers come from everywhere. Detroit Fashion Week is no different than New York Fashion Week, Chicago. We're just smaller. And we don't have as many advertisers and sponsors as they do in New York at this very moment, but we're getting there. So what we want to be able to do is do something with Fashion Week next year that really shows Women's Wear Daily and the world, because they're the Bible of fashion. If you can get published by them, if they're contacting you, they recognize something legitimate. They see something that they feel is worth letting the world know about. So what we want to be able to do is have a number of students and designers as part of Fashion Week next year, so that you'll be able to show what you can do. We have a lot of folks who are working behind the scenes as stylists and designers. We're putting together a segment for students who will design one or two pieces as a showcase. Yes, some water. Yeah. As a showcase. So if there are one or two pieces that you have that are really great that you want to show, we're going to allow students to do that. We want to be able to put students in a position where they can work behind the scenes. If they're learning how to be buyers or in merchandising, to be able to make contact with some of these legitimate companies and invite them. That's how you build your database of contacts, by literally reaching out as students, because it's more acceptable. Once you graduate and you say, I'm a buyer and I want a job, well, there's that give and take of, well, they want to talk to you, but they don't really want to talk to you because they don't want to be locked in. But as a student, what we allow our students our interns to do is to reach out and send information about who they are and what they're doing as an intern with Detroit Fashion Week. They're trying to find out, who their contacts are and what their company is about, what they do. And so you can get inside information and those inside contacts, so when you do graduate, someone at that company knows who you are. Someone knows your name. Even with the design schools, when we've got contacts at Parsons who email me regularly and send information about the different programs that they're doing. You want to be able to make all these industry contacts before you graduate, so when you graduate, you can walk in, you can literally pick up a telephone and call Joe at so-and-so magazine or Bob at so-and-so merchandising or a design house that you've made contact with and say, hey, it's me. I've sent you some samples when I was a student. Now I'm out of school and I'm looking to intern somewhere, or I'm looking for a job. Are there any openings, any possibilities, any interview opportunities available? And someone at that company is going to say, oh, yeah, you're so-and-so. You called me, 6 months ago or so. I remember you. Come on down and let's talk. If at the very least you get an in-person interview or get to talk to someone who remembers you on a telephone, that's a legitimate resource. That's someone who can pass your name on or can give you another name, give you a phone number. You want to be able to have those things. Getting jobs now is going to be harder than ever because nobody's looking to hire. So the one thing that you want to have in your arsenal is a contact database, a legitimate contact database, not just a phone book or a phone number you found online or a phone book you got online or you mail ordered a database of fashion merchandising or fashion houses or something. You want legitimate contacts, people with faces and names that you've talked to or that you've written to. That's the most important thing you can do, because I'll tell you, when you graduate, it's a completely different ballgame out there now. It's not an open field, and as you know, fashion has always been almost like a closed door type of thing. You gotta know somebody, and the way you get to know somebody is to meet those people while you're students, not after you graduate. So put yourselves out there. Make certain that they understand that you're about being in the business of fashion, and that you're not just excited about meeting them, that you want a job. You're hungry for a position. You want to put yourself out there, because that's what excites them. They want to represent the next big designer. They want to represent the next big name. As a buyer, I mean, to have a reputation as a student, as someone who's contacted 10, 15, 20 stores in Michigan, and everyone knows who you are, well, guess what's going to happen when those buyers get together at one market event, and someone says, "Oh, did someone call you by the name of Sue Brown?" And everyone says, "Oh yeah, she called me. She called me. She called me. She called me. Wow, she's aggressive." Da 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 da. All of a sudden, somebody in that pack is going to want you at their company, because they figure you're aggressive, you're studying the market, you're going to be coming out of school soon, and they're going to want you. Your value is going to be high. That's what you have to do. You have to do it. There's no getting around it. You cannot wait to walk across the stage. That day has come and gone. It's long gone. So the day you graduate, you don't have 6 months, a year to look for a job. You should be able to pick up a phone and call Joe and say, "Hey, Joe, I'm coming. I'm out of school now. I'll be there next Thursday. I'm flying to New York on Wednesday. Let's have lunch on Tuesday," or something. Make a relationship with somebody somewhere that's got legitimate contacts that can walk you in a door at a company you want to work for. Or if you're going to be independent and you're going to do your own thing, have your business plan down. Know exactly how your dollars are going to match up. Know exactly what you're going to buy. Know who you're going to buy from. Know who's going to be handling your accounts. Know who your banking is going to be done by. Know what percentages of profit you expect to make. Know how many people are in the neighborhood around the store you're going to open. I mean, that's how every company determines where they're going to open. Oh, well, there are 5,000 people here, and there's a McDonald's. Oh, okay, I want to open near there. Why? Because people are going to stop at McDonald's, because they're right around the corner, or they're across the street from where I'm going to locate. There's always a factual business reason for doing everything in business. There are no haphazard mistakes. There's no luck. Nothing's ever lucky. There's no such thing as good luck. Everything is hard work. You put in the time, you get out what you put in. Sometimes you don't make it. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes the business fails. But you just got to keep pushing. I mean, I've changed more than anyone I know, and I constantly change. I'm always learning new things. I'm always pushing the limits. And that's what I expect from people who say that they want to be in that business. And fashion isn't the end all be all. You may start off in fashion and end up somewhere else creative, but you still got to make those contacts. The fashion industry has the widest database of contacts of every other market out there. Every market, everybody, everywhere has somebody they know in the fashion industry. So if you start off in the industry and you find yourself in engineering or manufacturing or business or whatever, fashion is the one spot that everyone makes contacts with sooner or later. Sooner or later. It's a wide open field. It's one of the most welcoming fields. There are requirements to work for someone. But when it comes to networking, if you're in fashion, you can walk in a door and stylists, makeup artists, hairstylists, designer, buyer, merchandising, store owners, everybody likes everybody because we're all in the fashion business. It's different from being an engineer, I mean, in fashion, you can walk in a door no matter what area you're in, you are accepted. It's always a smile on someone's face. It's always someone who wants to talk to you. And if you're crossing over into another business, it's a lot easier because you'll find someone who wants or needs what you do. Any other questions? Yes. I really don't think the market is different. I can't say that the market is different, east side of the state, west side of the state. The market in Michigan is, I'd say it's flat. And it's flat because independent designers don't necessarily put themselves out there to be seen. If the designers aren't out there, the buyers aren't out there. And that's the problem in Michigan. We've tried to push for independent designers to actually kind of make themselves known. Come to FGI events, come to Detroit Fashion Week, come to almost any type of fashion event from across the state, and we get people to come out. But the independent fashion designers, pretty much, I mean, like I've talked to some state senators and developers about creating a fashion district in Michigan. And, everyone wants to do it, but you can't do it if the designers aren't there. And the designers have to be serious about doing business. You have to do more than just design. You've got to do the business side of designing. And so it's hard to convince people to invest money into creating a fashion district, which would be the best thing for Michigan design market, for the industry in Michigan, because the east side or west side of the state doesn't matter. The market in Michigan is flat because the designers haven't made themselves known. Most designers wait for the opportunity, but in New York, designers create the opportunity. That's the difference. The designers here in Michigan have to become a lot bolder, a lot more forceful in their voice. And the only way to do it is to get with groups like FGI. The bigger that organization is, the louder it'll be heard. You've got schools like IEDT. You got the Art Institute, and I'm on their program advisory committee for their merchandising program. There are schools here. There are Eastern Michigan University, Wayne State University, Lansing Community College has a fashion program. So there are programs everywhere. There are fashion students all across the state. But the designers, once you graduate, the stylists, once you graduate, buyers, once you graduate, either you go to New York, or don't go to New York, or you disappear because there's not enough work. And with designers, the only way you actually get work is to make garments and go to stores and get your clothes into stores. And a lot of designers just don't get that part of it. You've got to do the business, or you've got to have someone who can market your designs. Most independent designers have to do the marketing themselves. You have to go into stores and show your clothing, and know how to sell it into a store at the right price point. Because as soon as you walk into a store and they say, "How much do you want?" And you tell them you want, $300, $400, and they've got, Oscar de la Renta for the same price, that's going to be a problem. You got to prove yourself, or you've got to have something that says you are a designer of note and you're worth every penny of that $400 or $500 that someone's going to pay another designer, a known designer, for that price. So you got to understand your price point. You've got to create your popularity. You've got to create your clientele. You want to have a clientele in Michigan. You've got to have a private clientele. But you also have to create opportunities for those boutiques, those 1 through 5 pieces, 10 pieces that you can get in. You got to have a gimmick type of garment so that if you're designing dresses and skirts, pants or whatever, have something like someone can buy a bandana or some other thing that can sit on the shelf right at the counter with your logo on it or something that the store can sell. Even if they don't sell a dress, they sold 50 bandanas for $10 a piece, and you both made, $5 a piece on it. It gets your name out there. At the very least, you're selling something. Everybody's making money, and so your garments get to stay in the store. You've got to find different ways to sell yourself, and not necessarily sell yourself cheap, but know your market, know your price point, know where you are. Try to, as much as you can, to design a line so that you can travel it to Chicago or to New York or to Los Angeles or Atlanta, to other Fashion Week events across the country, because that also helps. A lot of designers who've done Detroit Fashion Week, there's two designers, they call themselves Familia, who did Detroit Fashion Week, launched their line with us, got written up in Women's Wear Daily like the next month. And that's huge. We've been published by Crane's Detroit Business, have followed our shows for the last 2 years. They are, the news company that we want to cover our events because they cover things that deal with business. They're not just, they're like Metro Times or some other magazine that'll just cover a show because it's popular. They cover us because they know that we're legitimately trying to push fashion as an industry in Michigan. So they follow us. They print information about events that we have coming up. Detroit News has covered us. Channel 2, Channel 7, Channel 4, Free Press. All legitimate press has covered what we do. And so those are the things that you want to focus on. Now, Detroit Fashion Week happens September 13th through 19th of next year. As students, as design students, you should be kind of focusing on what you want to do to be a part of it, and by way of either design or doing something in the background, helping with other areas of it, trying to locate those buyers, because just like with people who want to be buyers, who should be going into stores, trying to contact those folks, all of you who want to be a designer, guess who your best friends have to be? Buyers in boutiques. You should be going to every boutique you know and finding out who the buyers are and what they buy, looking at their racks and finding out what's on them, who they're selling to, because if they're selling clothes that look like things that you design, then possibility is that you could possibly be selling your stuff there in that next season or so. Finding out who the buyers are now is your way of getting into the stores next year or year after. And that also, like I said, as far as the state, is what makes fashion important in the state. The state won't recognize fashion as an industry unless the state's collecting taxes. That's the only way. They don't care about anything else except the tax base. So if independent designers began selling in stores, those stores would be paying taxes. The designers would be paying income taxes because you'd be making enough money to actually pay income taxes on your designs. And the state recognizes you as a business. All of a sudden, there are tax incentives for designers. Developers decide, well, we're going to build a fashion district. We'll make affordable rent for designers, just like with the gallery I had, affordable rent for artists. Those are the things that help the fashion industry. But you have to have enough folks who are designers, because without designers, we don't have buyers. And without buyers and designers, we don't have stores that support Michigan designers. So all of you guys come into play. Starts with the designers doing business as business in the business of fashion. And that's going to the stores and letting them know that you're out there, that you've got things you want to sell in, doing business with them. The buyers do business with you, and all of a sudden all this talk goes around and says, geez, there are designers all over the state just trying to get in our stores and selling things, and now all of a sudden they're buying Michigan product, as opposed to ordering things in from New York and Japan and Korea and Taiwan. They have a Michigan label. Yeah. You mean local movement as? No. I mean, I like to lie and say yeah, but no, because the buy local thing. The thing is, to buy local, you've got to have enough product, and there's enough product. It's just not on the shelves of Michigan stores. It's on the rack of a designer in a house, in a room, or in a basement, in a sewing room. The place for it is to be in a store on a rack. And that's where you have to get it, in a store on a rack. And, I mean, boutiques are so hungry to get affordable lines in their stores. I mean, this is probably the most opportune time for anyone in the fashion business that's dealing with garments or accessories to get into a boutique, because they're not buying anything. They're not shipping anything in from Korea or from New York, that is. Because they can't afford it. They've got too much stuff on the shelves now. The stuff they're selling now, they're confused about what to buy. Most of the stores I talk to don't want to buy in those higher designer names that are coming from out of town. So they're not buying anything. They're trying to decide how to change the store over. How do they change it over? Well, sure, they can buy the cheap stuff in from New York, or they can buy onesie twosies, 5 pieces from local designer, and have some other things from New York, and maybe feature Michigan designers on a rack. You know, there are a lot of things that they could do creatively, but sometimes it takes a buyer or designer to make those suggestions. And I would say probably look at what some of the designers are doing in New York. Check out their websites. Because there are a lot of kids that are going to Project Runway and getting turned down. They stand in line all day and they get turned down. Don't let that discourage you, because I know plenty of kids who do. Remember, the show it's a show. It's not going to make or break a career. A lot of guys, girls that go on Project Runway, they get seen and the show is over, and they still have to live their lives after the show. Only, a few people are going to have lines created, and just because they have lines created doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a multimillionaire because they had a line created. They still have to sell. So, don't let standing in line at a Project Runway event and being turned down in line just make you feel as if you have no potential as a designer. That means nothing. Most of the folks who actually look at your garments in line have nothing to do with the fashion industry at all. They're looking for people who will make great shows, and they select designers. The designers who win are really talented, creative designers. But you have to have, a mix of talent on a show that people are going to watch. So you've got to have drama. You've got to have all these things. And those shows are even though they last, 10, 12, 15, 13 weeks, those shows are shot in a matter of a couple of weeks. They do 2 or 3 shows a day. So don't let those shows let you think that's the way the fashion industry really works, because all those things are done, in a vacuum. It takes time to really, put a line together and present and all those things. You won't have those opportunities, unless you're actually in those types of shows. But still, most of the folks who've been in those shows, you probably don't even remember right now, So don't let that discourage you. So I know a lot of designers who went to Chicago and stood in line, and the little girl came out and said, that I should go home. Well, she really didn't like my stuff. They have no idea what they're talking about. They take in your designer. Sometimes they don't take it in. They just look at it in line, and they make a determination. They have nothing to do with whether you're a great fashion designer or have potential as a designer or not. They don't know what they're talking about. If those folks who are determining those things in line were legitimate, they'd be somewhere else outside of walking up and down a line on a street in Chicago looking at other people's work. Yes, you. Question? Okay. Just send an email to me at brian@detroitfashionweek.com, and we'll start putting up the applications probably right after the first of the year. What we want to see is our main goal is construction. Even with the designers who are seasoned, I literally go out and look at whatever they've designed previously to see whether the construction and the garments are up to speed. With student designers, we don't expect you to have expert construction, because we don't expect that the garments you're making are going to be going on a rack immediately, because we're asking the students to create designs that are samples of what they feel are their best creative works. But we expect the construction to be good enough so that if it were created, technically it would make sense. So we don't want creative threading and all those types of things, unless it's something that's a technical standard that could be created in like a factory or customized in a seamstress's shop somewhere. A pattern can actually be created from it. So we're looking for more artistic couture type designs from the students, creative pieces, and we want to be able to stick to a green theme again. So that's pretty much going to be the standard for next year's shows also. So we're not looking for just the average pantsuit or the average dress. We want something creative, artistic. If you look at the couture designs, if you look up New York Fashion Week online and look at some of the couture shows from Dior, and you'll see the really artistic, creative designs that they have there. And that's what we're looking for, students who really have an artistic flair, something really creative, something that is not going to be worn at a wedding or at a party or walking down the street. We want to see something that's really out there, but not junk. Something that has an artistic, creative flair, colorful. There's a lot of thought put into it. That's what we're looking for. Because we used to have a standard for students. Our students in our first shows had to create like 20 pieces for next season, which it was kind of hard for them. We did have a lot of students in those shows, but it's just we understood it was just impossible for you guys to take that much time while you're in school to create a line for next year and literally be able to present it. We supplied the models and hair, makeup, and all those things. So those things aren't a big deal. But yeah, for these next things, it's just one or two pieces, up to you. But we're looking for something that's really what you consider to be almost like your statement, your artistic statement. To pay in our show is only $350. It's very inexpensive. In New York, and this is the thing about our Fashion Week. In New York, the designer pays $22,000 for the small tent, $44,000 for the big tent. They spend anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 for a stylist to decide what's going to walk in which order. The designer designs the line. The stylist determines what's going to walk in what order, not the designer in New York. Makeup artists, hair, all those things. A designer in New York will spend $80,000, $90,000 on Fashion Week. In Detroit, they spend $350. We supply the models. We have a hair team. We have a styling team, and all these folks are professional. So we actually supply everything, and we walk the designers through the process. Look boards are mandatory, so a designer that's going to present, they have to send a look board. Basically, it's a board with pictures of everything that's going to be presented on that day. Anything that's not on the board doesn't show. So we actually walk you through the process of what you'd go through at New York Fashion Week, so you understand how a real show happens. But you don't spend thousands of dollars. I mean, in Michigan, it's enough where if a designer has to create 20 pieces, the expense is going to be a couple of $1,000s, probably just on the fabric and accessories and trying to do all the things and time put in, weekends and nights sewing. Because almost all of our designers have sewn everything that they put together. There have been, I believe, 2 designers that had pieces manufactured, but when they got to the show, our stylists had to be backstage and actually redo things and tuck things in and pin things up, even from things that were manufactured, because they just didn't fit the models right. We expect designers who do shows to do their fittings on the models that are going to wear the garments, design the garments for those bodies, which is what happens in professional shows, so that you're not showing just a generic sample and pinning it to a body, that you're designing for a specific model's body that's going to walk the runway. So if she's a certain height, that this garment you're designing is going to be a certain length, and her hips and waist and breasts are going to be fitted proportionately so that it looks the way you imagine it, the way you draw it, the way you pattern it. That's the way you want to show. If you want to start showing in a professional way as a student, so that you set a standard of being professional as you move up the line. Okay. Anybody else? Going once. Okay. Well, thank you for having me here today. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys. Hope you got something out of this. Website is DetroitFashionWeek.com. There are some there's some events that are coming up that are usually posted on the website. We usually post like a lot of the upcoming fashion events that happen around Michigan. So if you go to the website, a lot of things will be posted there. If you send us an email and ask to be put on the email list, we'll put you on the email list so you get the postings. Because everything that happens, anything that we get that's like a legitimate event, we send out to like almost 8,000 emails now. So you'll know what's happening, when it's happening, and where it's happening. And if something's happening up here, you should let us know. Thank you, and have a good day.